century. Between 1900 and 1924, approximately 1.75 million Jews migrated to America, the bulk from Eastern Europe escaping the pogroms. Before 1900, American Jews had always amounted to less than 1% of America's total population, but by 1930 Jews formed about 3.5%. This increase, combined with the upward social mobility of some Jews, contributed to a resurgence of antisemitism. In the first half of the 20th century, in the US, Jews were discriminated against in employment, access to residential and resort areas, membership in clubs and organizations, and entitled quotas on Jewish enrollment and teaching positions. The victims of the 1905 pogrom in Yekaterinozleben colleges and universities. The lynching of Leo Frank by a mob of prominent citizens in Marietta, Georgia, in 1915 turned the spotlight on antisemitism in the United States. 224. The case was also used to build support for renewal of the Ku Klux Klan, which had been inactive since 1870. 225. At the beginning of the 20th century, the Belis trial in Russia represented modern incidents of blood libels in Europe. During the Russian Civil War, close to 50,000 Jews were killed in pogroms. 226. Public reading of the antisemitic newspaper Der Stürmer, Worms, Germany, 1935. Antisemitism in America reached its peak during the interwar period. The pioneer automobile manufacturer Henry Ford propagated anti-Semitic ideas in his newspaper The Dearborn Independent, published by Ford from 1919 to 1927. The radio speeches of Father Coughlin in Field 1930s attacked Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal and promoted the notion of a Jewish financial conspiracy. Some prominent politicians shared such views. Louis T. McFadden, chairman of the United States House Committee on Banking and Currency, blamed Jews for Roosevelt's decision to abandon the gold standard, and claimed that in the United States today, the Gentiles have slips of paper while the Jews have the law for money. 227. A wagon piled high with corpses outside the crematorium at the recently liberated Buchenwald concentration camp, 1945 in Germany, shortly after Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party came to power in 1933. The government instituted repressive legislation which denied Jews basic civil rights. 228, 229. In September 1935, the Nuremberg laws prohibited sexual relations and marriages between Aryans and Jews as Rassenskandal, race disgrace, and stripped all German Jews, even quarter and half Jews, of their citizenship. Their official title became subjects of the state. 230. It instituted a pogrom on the night of 9-10 November 1938, dubbed Kristallnacht, in which Jews were killed, their property destroyed and their synagogue estorted. 231. Anti-Semitic laws, agitation and propaganda extended to German-occupied Europe in the wake of conquest, often building on local anti-Semitic traditions. In 1940, the famous aviator Charles Lindbergh and many prominent Americans led the America First Committee in opposing any involvement in a European war. Lindbergh alleged that Jews were pushing America to go to war against Germany. 232, 233, 234. Lindbergh adamantly denied being anti-Semitic, and he refers numerous times in his private writings, his letters and diary to Jewish control of the media being used to pressure the US to get involved in the European war. In one diary entry in November 1938 he responded to Kristallnacht by writing, "I do not understand these riots on the part of the Germans. They have undoubtedly had a difficult Jewish problem. But why is it necessary to handle it so reasonably? Acknowledgement on Limburger's part that he agreed with the Nazis that Germany had a Jewish problem. 235. An article by Jonathan Marvel in Antisemitism, a historical encyclopedia of prejudice and persecution, claims that no one who ever knew Limburg thought him antisemitic, and that claims of his antisemitism were solely tied to the remarks he made in that one speech. 236. In the East, the Third Reich forced Jews into ghettos in Warsaw, in Krakow, in Lviv, in Lublin and in Radom. 237. After the beginning of the war between Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union in 1941, a campaign of mass murder, conducted by the Einsatzgruppen, culminated from 1942 to 1945 in systematic genocide, the Holocaust. 238. 11 million Jews were targeted for extermination by the Nazis, and some 6 million were eventually killed. 238, 239, 240. Contemporary antisemitism. Post-World War II antisemitism. There have continued to be antisemitic incidents since World War II, some of which had been state-sponsored. In the Soviet Union, antisemitism has been used as an instrument for settling personal conflicts, starting with conflict between Joseph Stalin and Leon Trotsky and continuing through numerous conspiracy theories spread by official propaganda. Antisemitism in the USSR reached new heights after 1948 during the campaign against the ruthless cosmopolitan euphemism for Jew, in which numerous Yiddish-language poets, writers, painters, and sculptors were killed or arrested. 241, 242. This culminated in the so-called Dictator's Plot in 1952. Similar anti-Semitic propaganda in Poland resulted in the flight of Polish Jewish survivors from the country. 242. After the war, the KIELCE pogrom and the March 1968 events in communist Poland represented further incidents of antisemitism in Europe. The anti-Jewish violence in post-war Poland had a common theme of blood libel rumors. 243, 244, 21st century European antisemitism. Physical assaults against Jews in Europe have included beatings, stabbings, and other violence, which increased markedly, sometimes resulting in serious injury and death. 245, 246. A 2015 report by the U.S. State Department on Religious Freedom declared that European anti-Israel sentiment crossed the line into antisemitism. 247. This rise in anti-Semitic attacks is associated with both Muslim antisemitism and the rise of far-right political parties as a result of the economic crisis of 2008. 248. This rise in the support for far-right ideas in Western and Eastern Europe has resulted in the increase of anti-Semitic acts, mostly attacks on Jewish memorials, synagogues and cemeteries, but also a number of physical attacks against Jews. 249. In Eastern Europe, the dissolution of the Soviet Union and the instability of the new states brought the rise of nationalist movements and the accusation against Jews for the economic crisis, taking over the local economy and bribing the government, along with traditional and religious motives for antisemitism such as blood libels. Writing on the rhetoric surrounding the 2022 Russian invasion of Ukraine, Jason Stanley relates these perceptions to broader historical narratives. The dominant version of antisemitism alive in parts of Eastern Europe today is that Jews employ the Holocaust to seize the victimhood narrative from the real victims of the Nazis, who are Russian Christians, or other non-Jewish Eastern Europeans. 250. He calls out the myths of contemporary Eastern European antisemitism that a global cabal of Jews were, and are, the real agents of violence against Russian Christians and the real victims of the Nazis were not the Jews but rather this group. 250. Most of the anti-Semitic incidents in Eastern Europe are against Jewish cemeteries and buildings, community.
Yes, I need to cook my hot food. I have to clean potatoes, so I will do that. And I will watch the news, the early Danish evening news. So I have some sausages. I will make brown gravy and this potatoes. So I will stop the video and charge my camcorder, then I will read the finish after this video and start uploading.